Time now for me to review the penultimate episode of Star Trek Starfleet Academy Season 1. This is Episode 9, 300th Night. This was directed by Jonathan Frakes. And before I begin, just to say a big thank you to today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. I'll talk more on that later. It's been 300 days now since the Academy school year began, so school's out and the young people are celebrating while the USS Athena is off to Beta Z to see Starfleet's new seat of power, which I don't like. Starfleet Command should always be on Earth, but hey, what you gonna do? It's not like we're taking this particular continuity seriously or anything. Meantime, Jayden is doing some Klingon bonding ritual with his other classmates, but Caleb is distracted by memories of his mother. Well, it's a two-part season finale, so I guess it's time to bring back that dull story arc. Anyway, Caleb is in a turbo lift with Tremira, I can't remember. She shows up, and I can never tell if everything is okay with them or not, or if they're still arguing about something. But apparently, despite her big resolution in the previous episode, they're still a little bit estranged, right? But while they're in the turbo lift, we hear the computer announcer, who's played by Stephen Colbert, and he says the following: "Attention all cadets. To those of you who are clearly in a party mood this evening, a friendly reminder that storage rooms are for storage only and are not to be used for storing yourselves so you can do other things. So please, store it in your pants. The management thanks you." And someone who wrote that thought, A, that it was appropriate for Star Trek, and B, that it was in any way funny. What a terrible joke. Anyway, back in Ake's office, Admiral Vance appears. Now, it is a bit confusing if you don't know what's going on here, because Vance and this other guy from the War College, whose name I can never recall, they're actually holograms in this scene. Vance has been projecting himself via a hologram for the entire season so far. I'm not exactly sure where Vance is physically located, but he's a projection here, while the other guy is usually really there, but this time he's also a hologram for some reason. Now, Ake, she beamed in, so she's actually there, but their individual materializations into the scene happen so fast, you'd be forgiven for not knowing what was going on. It's really stupid. Honestly, security aboard this ship must be very confused as to who's actually really there and where they came from. Now, on the subject of security, time for a word about today's sponsor for this video, Surfshark. Sometimes I like to write the scripts for my videos in a local cafe. It's a nice change of scenery, but I'm always a bit paranoid of cafes with free guest Wi-Fi. These can often be hotspots for hackers to try and steal your personal data. That's why you need to protect your data and your privacy with a high-quality VPN like Surfshark. It secures your connection and encrypts all your information sent between your device and the internet. It also helps to protect against adware, malware, and trackers. But I'm a YouTuber who reviews films and TV shows, and sometimes I can't watch a particular show because it's not available in my country. Surfshark lets me change my IP address to make it look like I'm somewhere else. They've got 4,500 servers in 140 locations around the world, so I can bypass these geo-restrictions and watch content that I otherwise couldn't. Surfshark also offers 24/7 support and a 30-day money-back guarantee. So go to surfshark.com/Dave Cullen or use my code Dave Cullen at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. And thank you, Surfshark, for sponsoring this video. Okay, so welcome back. Apparently, series bad guy Nuisance Braca has got his hands on a synthetic version of the Omega particle. You might remember the Omega particle from that pretty forgettable Voyager episode. Again, that Voyager episode is still miles better than this entire series, but still. So Braca detonated this bomb, I guess as a test, in some solar system, and it just wrecked subspace, so much so that warp travel is no longer possible in that region for centuries, if at all. So he's got this Omega particle, and he's managed to create Omega mines. And so he plans to target Federation worlds with these things, and obviously that could kill billions of people. So I find it actually hard to believe that Nuisance Braca, who was once this, petty, low-life criminal, has become this highly sophisticated, highly calculated, genius terrorist who's just running rings around the Federation single-handedly. He's just their biggest threat right now. It's just absurd. So anyway, Caleb discovers that his mother has actually been sending him years of messages. And so he plans to meet her on this particular world that she's going to be on soon. Sam is coming with him. And then Genesis shows up. And then a drunk Darum shows up. And they head off in the shuttle and arrive at the planet Ukek. This is the planet where Caleb's mother is. Jaden and Tiramisu or whatever, they tell Ake what's going on. And this is a planet that looks very Star Warsy, as you can see. But to be fair, it does look great. I mean, the production values are very good. So Caleb, Genesis, Darum and Sam beam down to the planet, now wearing suitable blend-in clothes. Ake tells Vance she's leaving Beta Z and she's going to go to Ukek, despite not strictly being allowed to do so. At least the episode has a bit of narrative propulsion at this point, right? There's a bit of tension. Will Caleb find his mother? There's a countdown clock because Braca has this weapon. We haven't seen him yet, which actually I think adds to the mystery and suspense. So to be fair, so far this episode isn't doing too much wrong. It's actually not that bad. And no, I haven't fallen down the stairs and hit my head. Not recently anyway. This episode is kind of okay. It's actually executing its story as well as could be expected, and it's even managed to keep the annoying quippy dialogue down to a minimum, although with the exception of that awful Stephen Colbert line. The issue really is that I don't care about any of the characters on this show, because after 8 episodes so far, the writers have failed to make me connect with any of them. I don't find anyone likable on this show. Also, we're only halfway through this episode, and it is dragging a bit. I mean, yeah, there's a plot there, and there's some stakes and everything, but honestly, I think they could have removed that whole superfluous scene at the start with Jaden's ritual. It was just pointless. Weirdly, though, Caleb's mother finds him and threatens him with a knife until he identifies himself. So they have an emotional reunion. Meanwhile, Ake and the doctor in Reno and stowaways Jaden and Terima are still searching for the shuttle. Caleb argues with his academy mates, saying he's choosing his mother over Starfleet despite the risks. I think one of the biggest issues with this overarching story arc regarding Caleb's mother and Braca and this Venari Ral is that we don't know anything about this Venari Ral. We know that they're space marauders, right? But we don't know about the background, the politics behind them or anything. We don't know really what they're all about. And his mother she's a criminal. She can't let Starfleet find her. But we don't know this woman, and we don't entirely know what she's done wrong. And the Venari Ral are kind of, well, a faceless threat. Besides Braca, who's worked with them. This whole thing is it's just a weak story arc, right? So Caleb insults his friends as a means of encouraging them to leave, which works until they get caught, and then Caleb and his mother have to rescue them. It's kind of predictable. Security injures Caleb's mother, and then the Athena swoops in, flies down, and beams them up in a scene that is very reminiscent of the end of Star Trek Picard Season 3, when the Enterprise D rescues Riker, Worf, Picard, and Jack Crusher. And I suspect that's where they're drawing inspiration from in this scene. But the show cannot help but throw in some cringe writing here. Sam shouts, "Now this is a flex." Because we just have to have some contemporary 21st century social media speak in there, despite this being, the 32nd century? So they're beamed aboard the ship, and the ship is chased by Venari Ral vessels. And they tractor the Athena. So Ake decides to separate the ship so the saucer detaches from the rest of it. By the way, the Athena's saucer has its own warp drive, right? So what's just ridiculous is that somehow Braca has managed to basically put a wall of mines around the entire Federation. Really? Like how? How? We're talking about light years of space. There's no way it would be feasible to deploy such a minefield around one solar system, let alone dozens of them. It's just daft. I don't think anyone really thought that one through. Ake goes to visit Caleb's mother in sickbay. She seems like super triggered at the sight of her. I mean, yes, Ake did put her in prison, but the look is very, kind of PTSD. Reno delivers a Mayday SOS to Starfleet Command, while the camera pulls back on a pretty dramatic shot of the sheer scale of the minefield. But again, as dramatic as it looks, and the CG is good and everything, it's just not believable. But it kind of makes for a solid cliffhanger to leave it on. But seriously, I mean, how do you mine solar systems? I mean, look at this. There's planets in there. The Federation represents a huge portion of the Alpha and Beta quadrants. This minefield must span like significant amounts of 2 quadrants of the galaxy. It's just ludicrous. The Borg couldn't do something like this. The Dominion couldn't do something like this. But one guy, Noose Bracca, he did all this? Really? Anyway, this episode wasn't that bad. It was fairly watchable television, actually. But that's not really saying very much. It's not much of a compliment. And dialing down Jaden's role and keeping the woke stuff to a minimum actually kind of made it work. But one kind of decent episode out of 9 is not a good return. Ultimately, the show doesn't have likable characters. It's not really that fun. The writing is bad. The interpersonal relationships are dry and lifeless. Ironically, what made this episode of Starfleet Academy kind of watchable was that it kept the Academy stuff to a minimum and just played like an action-adventure space romp. It kind of played more like a standard episode of Star Trek again, right? So, there's plenty of space stuff going on. And though the episode doesn't do anything especially original, I was at least able to finish the episode in one sitting without having to, switch off out of boredom and come back to it an hour later. So that's going to do it for this 9th episode of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. And thank you again to our sponsor for this video, Surfshark VPN. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.